आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। गुकारस्त्वन्धकारो वै ऋकारस्त्वनिवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधित्वात् गुरुरित्यभिधीयते। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। So, in the last class, we had gone through a primer on the entire spectrum of literature in Vedas and how they are related to each other and how they bring the central theme of our life into our cognizance. And the central theme of our life is that we are born to understand that our joy, the very main purpose of our life, is to find total joy. That's what I was saying, what I was trying to say. That is really the main purpose of the life, and this is brought to light by the Vedas. This is what we need to understand. And if we don't understand it, then we get what we can, kind of like crumbs of life, some happiness here and there, but not in a manner consistent to what it is supposed to be. So we don't realize what we have, which is a sense of total joy, and as a result we become beggars of life, and we try to get, it's kind of like a very rich person that doesn't know how rich that person is, and because of that he or she tends to a life of beggary. It's something like that. So the purpose of the entire set of literature is to make us understand that you have what it takes. You don't have to be begged from outside, which is what we do from morning to evening. We are manipulating our experiences so that we can get some joy out of it, and which is okay, but we need to understand that there is something much more significant, much more important, and we need to get that vidya from the Vedas. And the entire set of literature is dedicated in many different ways. We saw the layers of Upanishads and Smritis and Puranas and Brahmasutras and Bhashyas and Prakarana Granthas and so on. how they are dedicated to provide the same message, which is Tatparya Nishchaya. We saw all that. So this was kind of like an academic introduction to Vedanta, if you may. Some of you had even listened to me back saying that I have a better understanding of how the various literature pieces are and so on. So that's good to know. It's useful, but an academic understanding of the very importance of Vedanta and Upanishads is nothing compared to what your life's understanding about yourself would be. We have taken this example many times. Swami Dayananji has given this to me, very, very important. He said, in some ways, if you look at it, that the entire set of literature acts as a mirror to you. Why? Because we cannot see our own face with our own eyes. Our eyes can see everything else, but it cannot see my own face. Supposing I want to look at my own face, you cannot do it unless there is a reflecting surface like a mirror. And so there is something missing about myself which I fail to understand until I find an adequate reflecting surface like the Vedanta. So the Vedanta is like a reflecting surface. So it's very much like getting a mirror to look at yourself in the house. So for a while you are selecting the mirror, and to make sure that it is the right one and it works well, it is clean, it is unpacked, and all the dust has been removed and everything. And you're at that point when you are unpacking the mirror and installing it, there's a certain way of putting all these small nails in the wall so that it doesn't damage the wall and yet it can hang the weight of the mirror. So there's a certain skill in doing so, and you do all that. You and your spouse or your friend are very busy in holding each other and putting the mirror. All this is really just the process of bringing a mirror in. So really studying the Vedanta Shastra, all the various books that we've had, and we will continue to look at it, is like rearranging the mirror. Why? Because you want to really see yourself in the mirror. Because if you do not have a mirror, it is very difficult. It's difficult to brushing the teeth may be okay, but supposing you have women that want to put some mascara here and there, it's very difficult to do. And even shaving for men would be difficult without a mirror, because you don't know exactly where you're cutting. So mirror is important. But here's the thing. So in some way, an introduction to the entire spectrum of literature, which is academic. So now let me do that comparison. Bringing a mirror and installing it properly can be likened to an academic introduction to what the literature is. Okay? But once that is done, once you have an academic introduction to the set of literature and so on, including the Upanishads, then the job of unpacking and fixing the mirror is over. In fact, that's exactly what happens in our life. Once you install a mirror, you don't worry about installing the mirror anymore. From that point on, you're not looking at the mirror You're looking at your own reflection in the mirror, isn't it? When you look at the mirror in the morning, that's not in your consciousness. Yes, it is there, but your mind is really focused on yourself. What do I look like? Am I combing my hair properly? Am I shaving? Am I putting the mascara in properly? That's what you're really concerned with. So, therefore, the analogy is that once you have at least a small introduction to the literature piece, now you should forget about the literature. You should look at what it says about you. So this is what we will start today. I think that the small amount of time that we spent in reviewing the literature, it's not a big amount, and it's not a complete introduction. You can have books and books on the entire literature, but for now, for our purposes, it's over. It's like you don't have to have the best mirror, the biggest mirror in the world. Some mirror is enough. You just get some, 8 by 10 from Walmart and just affix it for the time being. That's it. And it is enough for you to now look at yourself. So I would begin today's session by saying that from now on, please do not look upon Kaivalya Upanishad as a text. Look at what it says about you. It is very personal. And so my objective as a teacher would be to make sure that you get a glimpse about yourself rather than becoming knowledgeable about Kaivalya Upanishad, how many verses it has and remembering it. All of that is there, yes. But from now on, my job as a teacher would not be complete unless I can communicate to you how it is a mirror to you, your life, your beingness, your future, your very quest for happiness. This is what it is supposed to convey. And this is the way, and I need your cooperation. Don't look upon this as something kind of like, I've done this also, now I did Drikdishya Viveka and so on. In all these cases, it is meant to shine the light on you as a person, your qualities, your future. And so that's important. So we make that transition from last week, which was just an introduction. It's like purchasing a mirror, to this week and onwards from this point on. Mostly, we might go into cleaning the mirror here and there, but mostly it will be about focusing on your image as projected back by Vedanta, by Kaivalya Upanishad. Okay? So I want to spend some time in setting up the stage for that. Because it's very important. It is crucial that we look at it that way. Okay. Now, in order for us to appreciate this fact, one should see that Vedanta in general and Upanishads in particular, to say that it is a life-changing pursuit, a life-changing event, a life-changing uh, process is really a weak statement. It's not strong enough. You can say sometimes, for example, that, my meeting someone was a life-changing event. My getting married was a life-changing, my having a child was a life-changing event, life-changing thing. Or my getting a job or getting introduction to a brand new subject or something was life-changing. When you say this very, commonly, and you mean it also, mean that you could see an inflection in your life from which point on, what you were doing before got significantly improved. Life changing generally is positive. I don't think we ever say that this was negative. So, anyway, it's a positive event. So, you can say that it was a significant improvement. The introduction and understanding of an Upanishad is not just a life-changing event like any others. I don't know what words to use, but it is an unbelievable process, an unbelievable event to understand an Upanishad. I think some of those Acharyas, Swami Tattvavidananda ji uses, we all try to, because words fail us when you look at the enormity of how important it is. And he uses words like transformational. And so it is not just purely life-changing, it is totally transformational. As it happened to me, I'm just giving you my own personal view of it. They say that you should not listen to someone who is purely academic. We have. In fact, it's so interesting. I remember in the Jain temple when I used to teach for a number of years, I think, close to 15, 17 years in the Jain temple in Milpitas. And we used to have daily classes, and we became a fixture. Every Saturday, first every Sunday, and then later on every Saturday we would teach. And so there were a couple of people, Jain people, who would either pop into the class or perhaps they would talk to some of the students as the students were coming out of the class. And they were discussing, is this guy good? They'll say, oh yeah, he's very good, very good. We are attending his classes and so on. And sometimes they might even listen or something. 2 or 3 times there was a Jain priest, young man. He approached me very seriously. He said, "Sir, I understand that you are a good teacher of Vedanta. The University of Santa Clara is looking for someone to teach Hinduism. I would like to recommend you, and I suggest that you go there and become a professor." I used to tell him, "I'm sorry, I am not interested in becoming a professor. This is not academic for me." And I wrote this book along with Swami Viditatmanandaji. I did not write it. We just simply assisted him in doing it. And I realized that this is a lot of work. And it's nice. I think Swamiji is doing a good job of really transforming his talks into books and so on and so forth. Anyway, what I'm saying is that I'm not interested in doing academically. To the extent that my own life has been transformed, I want to communicate that to you. That's all. So I want to say this, that the introduction to Upanishad should be, can be, and should be a transformational event for you. In order to underscore this, I'm going to spend some time in giving you a story which was enumerated by Swami Maheshanandji in many of his books, but one of them in particular that I reread, I have read this book several times, but reread on Rudram, Sri Rudram. And he has a very thick book on Sri Rudram, where he has given talks to the public over, I think there's something like 35 talks on it. Absolutely marvelous. And it's the way that people explain Vedanta which is more important than it. Because Vedanta, which says Tattvamasi, what does it do for us? You are the same as Ishvara. Those words are not that important. I'm sorry, I just shouldn't say that. It's not as though they don't do anything for me. So one has to have, in fact, let me interrupt what I was going to say this in a minute, and give you another story within a story within a story. Okay? So, this is a real life story. I'm telling you, this is really what happened. So apparently there was an Englishman in Varanasi. So when the British were ruling India, and they used to think we are very superior to these dark-skinned people who are just aboriginals, and we are the Western culture, and we have to show them this, that, or that. Anyway, they had this idea. Once in a while, you will see some scholars from Britain, who would say, they seem to say something about Vedanta and life and so on, and I wonder if it has some truth in it. Let's look into that. So even though they had a bias from a social standpoint, they were curious to understand some of the nuances and truth behind the philosophical aspects of Hinduism. So this is that story. So there was a Englishman in Varanasi, as I just read, not just, but I have read it somewhere, who approached a very senior scholar of Banaras Hindu University. And so this person was not only a teacher, but also a Swami and a very well-respected person. So he approached him and said, can you teach Gayatri Mantra to me? He says, Gayatri Mantra, you know the Gayatri Mantra, Om Bhurvavaswadat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Tiyo Yo Naf Prachodayat. One of my important mantras. And so he says, I've heard of this mantra and I want to understand this. So the person told him, I'm sorry, you are not qualified to understand it. So in Hindi, this word, in Sanskrit, this word is used, adhikari. Adhikari means that I have the qualification. Adhikari. The word adhikari means when I'm capable of understanding this. This word adhikari is used if you go to the railway stations in India. The word officer, the word, sometimes they have these places where you can go to and you say, officers only, public not allowed, like that, So they would say adhikari. I remember this, once I understood this word, I remembered the signs on many of these, especially in the railway stations, they would say, don't just come into this office. There's somebody working here. He's the station master. It's called adhikari. Adhikari means qualification. Anybody can come in. You have to go through some qualifications to do so. So this Swami and scholar of the Banaras Hindu University told this Englishman, "I'm sorry, you are not an adhikari. You cannot understand it." So he says, "What do you mean you cannot understand it? I want to learn. Why can't I do this?" He says, "No." He says, "I don't understand that. Why? Why not? Why can't you do that?" He says, because he says, "Why do you want to learn it?" He says, "Because I understand that it's a very important mantra and it really transforms you, and so I want to be able to chant it and understand the meaning of it." He says, "No. Whatever you say, if you chant this mantra, nothing is going to happen to you. It will have no effect. It's your time wasted." He says, what are you talking about? How can that be? He says, "Let me give you an example." He says that suppose there is a king, and the king has a whole retinue of people in his palace. There are just like you have a president that has all these bodyguards and so on. So there are policemen and so on and so forth that are all there, and all saluting to the king and very important and whatever the king says and so on. So you go and visit the palace, supposing, okay, and you are a visitor. You are nobody as part of the kingdom. So supposing you go there and you tell this policemen who are guarding the king, "I want you to arrest this king." So you say this, I would like you to arrest this king. He has done something really bad." The policeman will look at you and says, "Who are you? What are you saying? Just go away. You can't say things like that." The king is there smiling, looking at this whole dialogue. The king says, "If you do that, this is exactly what will happen." As opposed to if the king says to the policeman, "Arrest this person. He's done something bad." They are not going to spend a second in arresting this visitor who the king has now said, "Arrest this person." The words are the same. The visitor saying, "Arrest this person," and the king saying, "Arrest this person," and they're all pointing out, in one case, the policeman will immediately arrest him. In the other case, they will laugh at him and they'll perhaps arrest him. Why are you saying stupid things like that? He's our king. So the scholar said, "I'm sorry, for you to say the Gayatri mantra will have no effect. In fact, Ishvara will laugh at you. Because you are some foreigner who just wants to sort of get into the very basics of it without having qualifications." And as the story goes, he said, "So what do I need to do?" He says, "You will have to jump into the river Ganga and drown yourself, take your own life, then Ishvara will make you reborn as a baby born in India. And slowly, if you have the right family, you come up to speed with them and they initiate you into the Gayatri mantra. Then when you chant Gayatri mantra, it has a lot of effect." So this is the story. And so here also, by just merely telling you this story, which I'm going to now recite to you, it may not do anything to you. I hope it does. And I hope it does. If it doesn't do anything, that means you are not yet qualified to understand the sheer importance of it. But if you were to bring yourself up, and so this is what we are doing, is that through the proper introduction of the subject matter, through Tattvabodha and through Drikdishya Viveka and now through Kaivalya and so on, you are getting more qualified. And if you are adequately qualified, the transformational message of this story that I'm going to tell you will change your life. Will not only change your life, it will transform your life. But it needs your qualification. And you know, another way to express this long, interesting story about Varanasi and the Englishman and so on, but isn't it, it's a very valuable one, is exactly the same thing where if you were to go to an advanced quantum mechanics course at Berkeley, and you're not even out of high school yet, you will not understand anything. You're not qualified. You're hearing the words. The professors are all saying all these subtle things. E is equal to mc squared, this, that, mass is equal to energy, all those kinds of things. You're hearing it. You don't get it. So I just want to give you that preface. But hopefully, as we will see in the study of Kaivalya Upanishad, if you see what is to be seen, then you will also equip yourself to understand it better and better. All right, here's enough of the background. It's 10:30. I think I have enough time to complete the story. So please listen to this very carefully and with all your attention and with seriousness. Don't just look upon this as, oh, this is just a story and so on. This is a very important story. Okay? All right, let me take a sip of water before I started, just to underscore the importance of the story. So this is a story that was enumerated by Swami Maheshanandji. And so just to say, this is not just from me, Vijay Kapoor, but it is from a Mahapurusha, from one who is a Jivan Mukta, who is an amazing person. The more I read about him, the more I read from him and so on. I have not yet seen in all my life, I have had a lot of acharyas, someone who is so well informed and so well communicated. I just love his books. I never met him, but he's like alive to me and does a lot to me, how he's changing my own life. So I highly respect him. And so this story is from him. Okay? So this story is around 1970. Because the time period is important for some of the reason for saying it. Why? Because there was no cell phones at that time. And no even telephones were not easy to get. All of this is important as part of the backdrop to the story. So this story has to be told 50 years ago, not today. Be that as it may, here is what the story. One day, two middle-aged people were watching they were hearing a radio broadcast. 'Cause I don't even remember. I think there was television in 1970 in India, but I'm not sure. So let's leave aside television. So anyway, but radio was there throughout. Everybody used to listen to the radio all the time. Just to give you one personal note to that, when Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated, I remember this so well because I was a youngster, I don't know, 7, 8 years old or something like that, who had chicken pox. And my grandparents were visiting me. And my parents, I could tell, I had no idea who Mahatma Gandhi was. But my whole household was such in such shock and such sorrow that my father and mother just were glued to the radio station completely. Every word, what's happened and where's his body and so on. I remember that memory stays with me. So radio was the primary means of understanding. Anyway, going back to our story, these middle-aged people, about 50, 55, were listening to the radio, and if they found that there has been a major derailment of a railroad between Calcutta and Kanpur. I don't even know whether this is the right one. I'm just making up some of the. So there is a train. There's a major train, not just one of those small ones, but this is a express train. And there was a derailment, and a very major derailment, where 2 of the railroad cars overturned and 200 people died. And they just listened to this radio. Their life just became, their life changed instantly. Their son, 25-year-old son, was on that train. He had bought the ticket in New Delhi before he embarked on this journey. He was going to go to Calcutta, and from Calcutta he was coming back to Delhi via Kanpur to do some business. He was in his father's business, and he was coming back. He was on that train. They say the life went out of these 2 guys. They said, wow, I think. So their only hope was that, so only about 2 or 3 of the railroad cars overturned. The rest of them did not. So their thinking was that perhaps they might have survived. So they immediately rushed to the railway station and found out any more details. So they said, Madam and Sir, the only thing we can know is that 2 or 3 railroad, what's called bogies in India, 3 bogies were overturned that were first class. The lower class, second class and third class somehow survived, but the first class bogies overturned, and all 200-300 people from there have died. We had a couple of small survivors here and there, but all of them have died. This is what we have gone. This they found out at midnight by just talking to them and so on and so forth. And they said, we have no other news. And if your son was, they said, yes, our son was traveling on the first class. So they said, I'm very sorry. It's very likely, almost very, very likely that your son is no more. So now they came back home, and this was not a just speculation. These people said it's a very major derailment, and 250 people have died, 200 people have died, and it's all in the matter of these three bogies that were upper class. You know, they are shocked and in great sorrow, and from that point on, they have accepted it, and now they are making arrangements to go there to make the funeral, to find out if we can identify the bodies. We want to see our son for the one last time, even though just the body of the son, so we can bring him and do the proper cremation with all the religious things and so on. This is what they were just involved with. And so when the relatives and friends and neighbors all learned about it, there was just a lot of crying, and there was a lot of sorrowful scenes and so on. And their only hope was that perhaps we can get his body. And they were trying to find out who to send. The father said, I will go and I will bring the body back home. And so they had some periods of relief and so on and so forth, that at least we get the son back. He's gone. This is Ishvara's wish. What can you do? There's nothing you can do about it. But at least we can give him proper cremation and so on and so forth. So they were in the middle of doing this, and in so on and so forth. Suddenly, there was a taxi that stopped in front of their home, and a stranger walks in with a box of sweets. The box of sweets is a symbol of giving someone a gift. You know, this is called mithai. Here, like for example, you can go to See's Candy, and you don't use the See's Candy lightly. It's only when you want to give a gift to someone and say congratulations. So this guy walked to a taxi, walks in the door with a big smile and said, Mr. So-and-so, congratulations. So this fellow said, what are you talking about? Don't you know we're in the middle of mourning? And you are bringing in, who are you? Get out of here. He said, sir, hold me. Congratulations. Your son is alive. They said, what? Are you joking or what? He said, no, sir. I was with him. We were both traveling together in the same compartment, and we got to know each other. And yes, our railroad, our bogie did overturn, but a miracle happened. It overturned into a muddy area, and we were thrown out into the mud. We lost consciousness, but we were hardly injured. There were a few scrapes here and there. And he said after we regained consciousness, and there was a scene where everybody else, there was like 5 or 6 people who survived, and the two of us were there. And we're alive. Your son is alive. So finally, this person, they wiped their tears and said, really, where is he? He says, here's what happened. You know he was going to Kanpur for some business. He says, yes, we know that. So he said, since he's okay, he might as well go and finish that business in Kanpur, and he will be here tomorrow. And there was no other way to give you this news. He knew that I was going straight to New Delhi. So he requested that I stop by and give you this news. Imagine this. This is the story. So now we can start to relate that to our life. Okay, so listen carefully and pay attention to the details and see what the importance of the Upanishad is. Okay, this is not just academic, this is something very transformational. So therefore, exactly like this, the story, we are, if we are not sorrowful, we have a right to be sorrowful, considering what our situation in life is. And the situation in our life is that I am bound to die. I don't want to die, but I have no choice. And even while I am alive, all is not well with me. I am really struggling to find some happiness here and there. For some time it seems to work out okay, but not for a long. And it is kind of like, we don't think about it this way. It's kind of like, if someone has been given a death sentence, it's a matter of time before you are executed. So similarly here, the only thing is we don't think about it. But the moment you come and think about it, you'll say our time is very limited. You say, oh, why, I still have so much time, and so time passes very quickly. And so I have a death sentence on me. Whether the state executes me because of some crime that I have committed, or Ishvara makes me go away because of the body cannot last and so on, it doesn't matter. So this is a life where I get some snatches of happiness. Going back to the story, Swami Maheshananji says, just like, supposing you were to find out that yes, we can go and get the body of our son, and you feel some moments of relief that at least I think we can cremate him properly. So similarly, when you get some small morsels of happiness amongst the middle of the fact that the whole life is full of sorrow. I think I've done this before. There was a Western saying somewhere in the West, life is a bitch and then it ends. It epitomizes this feeling very well. But really speaking, it's not as though the life is sorrowful and then you'll be okay. No. The life itself is sorrowful and then at the end you just die. This is the reality of where we are. So this is like, and also this is something which you don't have any doubts about. So the fact that they lost their son, after that they got the news from the radio, then they went to the local railway station, and those guys, they're not joking. They're saying, yes, there was a very major accident, I'm very sorry. And yes, the first class compartments people were all overturned. They're the ones who really died, most of them. So this was a fact. Similarly, the fact that I am in the middle of a life which is full of problems and in the end it ends is not a joke. It is a fact. No one can say, oh, no, I don't believe this. No, not a question of belief. It's going to happen. So it's not as though it's a news which is unbelievable. It's a believable news. But it is a wrong assumption. Just like their belief, here I use the word belief carefully, their belief that their son has died is not truthful. Similarly, our belief that I am a limited person with limited life and limited happiness is a belief which is not true. And the messenger, like this stranger who came in with a box of sweets, that instantly transformed the life of the mother and father of this boy. And all around them, every neighbor and friend and relative who were crying, they transformed their whole life. That messenger is the Upanishad. This is the Upanishad. This is the importance of the Upanishad. It's not just an academic book. Yes, there are differences because you're right. It's if you are not qualified, you will not understand this message. It is exactly like Gayatri Mantra by this Englishman or Tattvamasi for a high school person. But it's like, supposing I'm not sure, I'm making myself up in the story. I'm making up that part of the story myself. It's like a messenger comes in and you just don't even listen to him. It doesn't make any sense to you. You more rather believe the railway person rather than this person. This is an important thing to see. Now, so let me bring up the next point of this, which Swami Maheshananji pointed out very well. I really appreciated that. One can ask, how did this happen where the railway person did not know and this person knows? The railway people didn't know that my son is alive. How can they give me? It's not as though they are making things up. They just did not know this at all. How is that possible? And how is this person knows that he was alive? This is a very important thing to see. Okay? So, for those of you that have been studying Vedanta, and for those of you that have been relatively new, we have been saying this for a while, and I repeat that here. Our mind cannot directly see the Atma. Isn't it? This is a statement that we often make, which is the truth statement. Our sense organs, of which the mind is the most senior one, it's the most sophisticated sense organs. Swami Dayananji used to say that in the old days, nowadays of course there's Ubers and so on, but in the old days when you had to get a taxi, what you will do is to dial a number for the taxi company. And the taxi companies have very interesting names. They'll have names like area code, I don't know if they can all get it, but 888. And then the number is 777 because I haven't seen the area code 777, so I'll make that up as 888. And the rest of the numbers are all 7. And you see them in the top of the taxis so that you don't have to remember. Is it 4797? Nothing like that. 777. We used to call them up and say, I need a taxi. So you say, yes, where are you? And where do you want to go? Oh, I'm at point number this and so on and so forth. And then I need to go to that point, and that's about 10 miles away, and I need the taxi as soon as possible. So now this call is taken by a dispatcher. And the dispatcher has the entire, on a board, I guess, or somewhere, where you have the taxis that are all over, know exactly where they are. And so the taxis are the individual sense organs, and the dispatcher is the one that makes sense out of where the taxis are and said, you kindly go and pick up this client, this customer. So the mind is like that. The mind is a sophisticated sense organ that manages the various sense organs that are busy. I'm seeing things, and the mind is saying, okay, I know you're seeing things. I'm also hearing some things, and the mind says, yep, I understand, you're hearing. And I'm also touching. So this looks like a nice fruit. And you approach it and you touch it, and it is very rock solid. So you know it's a false fruit. So then the mind has to resolve. The eye says, I don't know, it fooled me. It looks like an apple. I'm hungry, I want to eat it. And the sense of touch says, don't, you'll break your teeth. And the mind is to resolve, and he says, he's right. The touch is better. Okay, he says, if you have any choice, just smell it. You smell it, there's no smell of the apple. So he says, didn't I tell you? It's called the mind. So the mind is the most intelligent dispatcher that manages what my life is all about, what's going on, isn't it? The mind cannot see the Atma. So here, in this story, the railway department is like the mind, because it knows where the trains are, if there is an accident, what is happening in the accident, are there some people who died, who survived, stoppage of trains, alternative transportation, all of that is the railway department. They are all very full. But they don't know specifically who died. Why? So similarly, the mind knows a lot, but it cannot know the Atma. In fact, it's an extension of the fact that even the eyes cannot see yourself. And the mind is an extension of these sense organs. And if the eyes cannot see your own face, then the eyes can turn to mind, and he says, what do I look like? The mind says, you tell me. I'm just trying to make some sense out of what you look at it. And the eye says, I cannot see the face because I'm like the flashlight and I cannot see the battery. The mind says, you're right. So let's give it up. I can't tell you what you look like. Then you have to go through some looking in mirrors and so on and so forth. So in this case, the mind is incapable of seeing the Atma. So the doubt, going back to the very doubt, how is it that the railway department didn't know that my son was alive? And how come this person knows? The railway department they're dealing with a lot of things, and they did not know exactly who survived, who did not. They go with big numbers. 200 people died, and a couple of people survived, but we don't know who survived. And all we have to do is to give the notice to the radio station that please announce that there is an accident and 200 people died. That's all we can say. So they were also right. It's not they don't know. How can they describe that my son, because they don't know the individual? So similarly here, this is an important thing to see. Your mind will never be able to see the Atma. And this is exactly what my life is. It's a very interesting, serious and revealing statement. Really, my whole life goes by in a state of semi-sorrow. And why? Because I think that this is what we have used the word appliance for, that my appliance is only capable of lighting up things, but it cannot light up electricity, which is the very source of it. Until the Upanishad comes in and says, hey, wait a second. Did you say that you are a samsari? That you were born on such and such day, and this is what you are going to happen. Is that what you? He says, yes. What do you mean? Is there some other way? It's like the stranger coming in and saying, are you all in a state of sorrow? So he says, yes. Is that what you think? Your son has died, hasn't it? He says, yes, of course. No, he hasn't. Stop crying and take these mithais and enjoy. He's alive. Exactly like that, the Upanishad says, are you saying you are a samsari? And we say, of course. What do you mean? Isn't everybody else also a samsari? We are all together crying. Upanishad says, don't. No reason for it. I mean, if you want to cry out of just fun or something like this, we have a couple of kids in our family. It's very interesting. As these kids grow up, they go through different stages of what really appeals to them. And we were just at a family gathering the other day, and the kids there was one 3.5-year-old girl, and what she was really interested in doing, really, this is a fact. We were all sitting there for breakfast together, and what she wanted to do, and her mother said, okay, keep her busy. She would go to you and frighten you. Oh. And what you're supposed to do is to start crying. She just thinks this is absolutely a lot of fun. Then he goes to person number 1 and she says, oh. And that person says, oh. Then that person is over. Then she tries to do the same thing to the others. And then, there's like 7 or 8 of us, she took us like 2 minutes to do this. Then she wanted to do it again. And her mother said, okay, that's enough. And she was disappointed that I'm not making people cry. So here we have everybody in this life is crying. Because the life makes us cry, frightens us. And the Upanishad says, are you all crying Why are you all crying? They said, what do you mean? He said, no, no, obvious. You're crying because you're all a samsari? He says, yes. Stop it. So, this is the importance of the story. So when we look at the Upanishad, if we are qualified, because to really understand the importance of the transformational statement, we have to be qualified. And qualification also means a understanding why this is possible despite my contrary experience. See, that's all part of the qualification. Because it's exactly like supposing there is a immature person in the family. See, supposing there's an immature person in the family who's weighing two things. One is a railway station proclamation that there has been an accident and 200 people have died. And the other one is this guy who comes in through a taxi and knocks on the door and says, no, 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 this is not true. Your son is alive. Who are we going to believe? And so some person that has the mind which is silly. That's the only way you can say that. I remember there's and you go through life and you find there are people who are mentally immature and deficient. And they go through normal things and so on and so forth, but what they say doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And the reason I interrupted myself is because I remember one of my cousin's husband, this is a long time ago. I had a cousin, this is almost when I was 14, 15 in Amritsar. And so one of my cousins, Veena, she got married to this guy, and who was England returned. So in those days, if you spent some time in England, you were considered to be, wow, somebody. The fellow is not even mature, we found out. And so people used to tell that there is something wrong with him. This is what happens in arranged marriages, that you don't fully understand what the other person is. They hide all the defects, somehow get you married. Done. Your life is spoiled. I remember this so well. This is what I'm telling you, is that this person, whose name I don't remember, we were at a get-together. He had just come back from England, and he was very proud of talking about his experiences in England, and he was just showing off. When I was in London, I did this, and we were also saying, wow, that is a lucky person to go to England. So he said one day, I'm telling you, this is a real story. So we were all having lunch together, and with the lunch was also some curd. And so he said, let me ask you a question. Do you know what they call curd in England? So we said, there's youngsters all sitting together, and we said, no, we don't know. He says, no, they have a different name for it. Try to think about it. What would it be? So I remember this so well. So I said, no, we don't know what they say in curd. Curd is corn or what? He says, no, it starts with a Y. And we couldn't come up with it. So he says, see, couldn't you say it is yogurt? So we said, okay, so they called it yogurt. That's good. But the way he was talking about it, Even at that time I said, his screw is loose. Why is he doing this? We don't know what curd is called in England. Why is he making a big deal out of it? I don't understand this. We don't know, we don't know. He is saying it starts with a Y. Maybe you'll get it. So in life there could be a person who is immature like that, who would say, I am not sure which one is telling the truth. Is it the railway department? I think the railway department is much more truthful. That's their business and so on. They feel everything is dead. This fellow just comes up and maybe has some agenda. He just wants to get some money. Sometimes they'll say, okay, I give you the good news, and you take out $100 and you say, here, thank you so much. Maybe he has that. A mature mind will say the sincerity of this person, the truthfulness of it. With he wants to give me the mithai and then walk away. No agenda. He's not asking for $100 or anything like this. And he is saying that he knew the name of my son. He knew it exactly. It is specific. In the case of railway department, it is non-specific. So it requires a certain maturity on our part. So exactly the same situation is there. On one hand, on one side, our life is full of problems. And it's got lots of uncertainty. And it is verified by everyone. You can ask everybody, hey, I'm not completely happy. Are you completely happy? They'll say, no, I'm not also completely happy. You ask anybody, but they'll say, yeah, this is the way things are. And in comes this Kaivalya Upanishad which says, no. You want to tell you are completely happy, you just don't know it. That's it. So if I don't have a mature mind, I'll come to the wrong conclusion. It is like this cousin's husband who says, do you know what curd is called in England? Why do you have to believe this person? Why should just everybody else says the same thing? And you come along and it says Kaivalya Upanishad. It has never been done before. How many people read Kaivalya? A mature person will say, really? And there the authenticity and the trustworthiness of the Shastra comes important. It is not something to make money. It is not something that was started. It is a Paurushaya. And it is, we would like to help you, but you need to want to be helped. Swami Dayananji used to say that. He says, so that I'll finish the class with we'll continue on next time. He says, have you ever seen a professor of physics knock on your door and say, can I come in? So you'll say, who are you? I'm the professor of physics at Berkeley. I'm getting into the habit of not saying Stanford because I went to Berkeley and I live very close to Stanford, so everything is Stanford, 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 but I should give some respect to my alma mater. So this is a professor from Berkeley who would say, let me in, I want to show you the laws of physics. It doesn't happen. And if somebody should do that, you'll just say, are you crazy or what? I don't want to learn the laws of physics. I've got things to do. Go away. But you will see lots of people who are religiously minded, who want to convert you. Jehovah's Witnesses, and some do it by force, some do it by money, but they want to do it. Whether you're ready or not. Vedanta is not like that. Vedanta says there is some truth. If you want to know, then please inquire. That's all it says. So, I thought I would just talk a little bit about the significance of Upanishads before we actually enter into it. And I request that you look at it not as academic, but as a transformational piece of information for your life. So with that, I close the class today, and we'll take up there's a few more things I want to talk about Upanishads in general, which will not take that much time, and then we can get into the Kaivalya Upanishad itself. Okay, so with that, I close the class. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Good to see you. Good that you are attending this new class on Kaivalya Upanishad. Happy that you are all there. And I'm really amazed that some of you attend the multiple classes, both the morning class, and it must be so much more difficult to listen rather than to talk. So I appreciate that. That shows your real dedication and interest in doing so. That's wonderful and excellent. There's no questions per se. Then I will take your leave and hopefully we'll see you next week. Om.